All right. Well, I'm here at Ross Machine Racing today. We're just doing it's been a while since I did my last video. And I'm, I guess the reason it's been a while, I've had some issues. One of them was I was having problems with the fuel injection system not working right. it, when I would hit like 4,800 RPM, the fuel, looking at the data log, the fuel would just go dead lean. And it took a while figuring out what that was. I took the whole summer of 2018 just going through it little by little, trying to figure out what was causing it. And it turned out that it was the ECU was bad. And I think caused that problem was I had stretched the injectors that were in there, worked fine without the turbo. But then when it put the turbo in there, it wanted more fuel. And I stretched the injectors to 123% of their duty cycle, which is way past where you should run them. Normally 80%. So I think that may have hurt that ECU. I'm not certain, but I believe it might have. It worked fine up until then, and it was a DIY auto tune Megasquirt 3 with the MS3X card, so I could run fully sequential. So anyway, it worked fine. I'd recommend it to anybody, but I replaced it with a EFI Source Gold Box and Megasquirt Gold Box, and that thing works great. It's awesome, and the guys there at EFI Source are very helpful. They talk to you over the phone, and so I'd recommend them to anybody. So since then, I replaced the ECU, and then this summer I got it to the track, and it ran right. It ran a little bit too right, and I proceeded to burn up two pistons, cylinder 4 and 6, and I wasn't quite sure why that was. And so anyway, I've replaced those pistons with 10-to-1 excuse me, 10-to-1 pistons, and they have a thermal barrier coating. They're Icon pistons. It's got a thermal barrier coating on the piston, and I've also added EGT sensors to each cylinder, and so I've got that on all 8. And I guess that's kind of like, it looks like I was looking at the big guys, the street outlaw guys. I ran into them at up there at my local drag strip, Cecil County, and Birdman was up there, and Vixen was up there, and they all have that same kind of setup where they run the EGT sensors on every cylinder, and they have an O2 bung, an O2 sensor at the end of the turbo. So anyway, here's the CAN bus module. EFI Source makes that, and it interfaces, and they design it to interface with their EFI controller. And so I haven't run it in a long time, but it seems to work pretty well. It's easy, easy to get set up and running. So I've got that there, and then I've got the controller up underneath my front seat, my passenger seat. So that's where the controller is, and that's the Bluetooth connector up there on the front of it. So I guess that's kind of like the story of that. And one of the other things that I guess I'd like to point out was I had another problem I had prior to that was this number 1 cylinder. I wound up wearing the skirt out on that where I had a bad piston slap, and it took me a while to figure out what that noise was coming from, but it turned out that, yeah, that was it. And I believe the cause of it was I had the fuel system set up. I don't know if you can see this here. Yeah, there you go. I had the fuel system set up where the fuel came in here, or came in on this side, and it ran around the back and come around the back here, and then come out here, and then just ran up to the fuel regulator. And then and I think because it was coming in that way, this cylinder here actually wound up with the lowest pressure because it was at the end of the line. And so what I had was I had a lot of wear here where the skirt slapped, and I had a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less, and none on this side of the motor. There was no skirt wear over here on the even side of the motor. So anyway, so what I've done is obviously you can see it now. So I got the fuel coming in here, and I come in here back in there to a Y, and I split to both sides of the fuel rail. Both fuel rails of fuel splits off at the back coming in, and then it comes out here, and then goes down to my regulator. And that's better. I think there's a better way to do it still, but I haven't implemented that, which I think is just bringing the fuel in the very middle and letting it run out both ends. I think that would make it even better. But this is how the you know, if you look on the Aeromotive website, that's kind of how they say to set it up, and that's their fuel filter, 10 micron fuel filter. It's got a Aeromotive 1000 fuel pump in the back. And so anyway, so since then I've also added 80-pound injectors, because we're going to be making some more horsepower here pretty soon. Last time I had it to the track, the thing ran 131 mile per hour, and I'm sorry I don't have an ET to give you. I was sandbagging somebody, and I let off the brake and broke the beam and sat there too long. But anyway, it ran 131 mile an hour. Creamed the guy, but anyway, so that's pretty much that. Now, what I want to do is I also need to give a shout out to my buddies at Ross Machine Racing, Tommy Ross. He's the biggest reason that this car has fuel injection on it. This motor has fuel injection on it. I started out with a carburetor when I first built the car, and Tommy, he was prototyping a fuel injection throttle body, and he wanted to test it. So I said, well, I'll test it. Well, I'll do it. And so we started out with it, and then I could see the advantage of fuel injection and how you could adjust the fuel, which I was having trouble, you know, adjusting it to where I wanted it on the carburetor. And so that's why I've got the Edelbrock intake on there, and I started out with that and just that and fuel injectors. But then we went to full sequential, and that's how all this other stuff came about. So now I make the trigger wheel and a trigger wheel, the sensor bracket for the trigger wheel, the bushing for the CPS bushing for the cam position sensor bushing, and I make these coil brackets here. If anybody wants to go fuel injection on their 440, I've got those parts, and you can reach me at neverenoughperformance.com. Now, I'd like to show you some of the Ross Machine Racing stuff, some of the other stuff that Tommy sells, and you can find him at rossmachineracing.com. So this is some of the cool stuff they make right here. So this is a Supra intake manifold, and looks like it comes complete, fuel rail, pretty much everything, and except for the throttle body. Don't have a throttle body, but this only fits, the Supra intake only fits the 2JZ-GTE motor. And and then some of the other stuff, he makes throttle bodies. So he has a 75 millimeter. He's got a 90 millimeter, a 82.5 millimeter throttle body. And you can buy those, they're configurable. So if you need left, right, counterclockwise or clockwise, you know, direction on the throttle plate, you just have to, when you go to the website, you order it, you build it basically how you want it. The 90 millimeters comes with these different adapters. Well, it doesn't come with all of them, but you have to, whichever one you want for your setup, you just order it. So he's got a V-band here that you can order. There's one here if you just want a silicone, if you want to push a silicone piece over top of it. And he's got a couple other ones here. I guess it's fancy clamp setup here. So I don't know exactly what these are, but I'm sure if you're into that, you'll know what they're for. So he also has these velocity stacks if you want to build your own intake. You can buy different size velocity stacks. You can see they've got a nice taper here, and so there's different ones for that. He's got so there's also intake manifold stuff here for building your own intake. He's got if you want to add a water meth injection setup, you want to add some extra injectors. Here's a manifold for that. It just you weld it to your charge pipe. It's got a taper on the back of it there, so you can weld that to your charge pipe. Then there's these fuel injector bungs for like building your own intake again. And then there's different size fuel rails. So there you can see the different sizes there. So I think this is up to 5/8 or 3/4, I don't know. And here's a mounting bracket for the fuel rail. And then here's a fuel rail. I don't know what motor this goes on, but this is a completed fuel rail. And these are adapter plates for, like, I guess for whatever throttle body it is that you want to use. I guess you can buy a adapter plate to fit your particular intake. So Anyway, I think that's about all about Ross Machine Racing, but at rossmachineracing.com.